Up to this point, you probably should have a little bit of an understanding of how Python handles expressions, it handles variables and assignments, and you've just seen a video on how function definition and evaluation works inside Python. So you probably have a pretty good idea based on your kind of middle school and high school algebra for expressions, variables, assignments, things like that. If you're new to programming, kind of function definition, function evaluation can be a little more mysterious. So what we did for this session of the class is we created a tool called PyStep that's designed to help you understand the structure of Python programs and how Python programs are evaluated. You can get to it by going from the main class page down and clicking on PyStep. And what you'll see here is there's kind of an overview page that talks about PyStep. It has a link that allows you to go out and actually pop up PyStep in CodeSculptor. It's a CodeSculptor program. And most importantly, it talks a little bit about kind of the associated tutorial material that we've provided to help walk you through examples in PyStep that are designed to help you understand how basic Python works. So what you can see down here, most importantly, there are 5 links. Each link corresponds to a tutorial. Level 0 is expressions. Level 1 is variables and assignments. Level 2 is functions. Level 3 is logic and conditionals. And level 4 corresponds to local and global variables. So my suggestion is you watch this video and then you just simply take your time and work through these 5 tutorials whenever you feel like you need extra help. I'll kind of work through the first 3 and spend a fair bit of time talking about functions, which is, I think, is the place where PyStep shines, actually. And so if you're having trouble with functions, I recommend you go through and work through these first 3 things and watch the rest of this video. Okay, let's get to it. All right, let's get started working with PyStep. So I'll click this link here, and it pops up a CodeSculptor demo, which is PyStep. We'll run it. And here's the frame for PyStep. A little bit about the layout. These buttons control the behavior of PyStep. For example, these control the language level and the examples that you're looking at. These control evaluation. We'll work with those in just a second. This is the example program and its name. This will hold information about the variables you'll create inside your Python program. And this controls information about whatever red portion of the program you currently have selected. Here, this is a print statement, so it says print, and it'll give you the options at various language levels for things you can kind of use in place of that print statement. Let's move on, since this is fairly straightforward, let's move on to this example. So what we're going to do is let's walk through understanding the structure of this print statement and how it might be evaluated. So the critical thing here is it's print expression. So I'm going to use the left arrow keys to move back and forth here. Now I'm selecting the expression in the print. It's a times. Notice that the outermost level is a times here. It has 2 sub-expressions. It has 1 plus 2. That's a plus. Use the left arrow key again. Over here I have a power. This is exponentiation. And notice that this plus statement has 2 children, the value 1 and the value 2. So let's walk through evaluating this particular print statement. So the key rule for evaluating an expression is to simply evaluate each of its children. Okay, so in this particular case, evaluating the outermost times expression, we need to evaluate this child, which is 1 plus 2. Well, to evaluate 1 plus 2, we need to evaluate 1, we need to evaluate 2. Well, those are numbers, those are values. So at this point, we can just apply the operator and we can just reduce 1 plus 2 to 3. So I'm going to click step. So PyStep just made that reduction. It said 1 plus 2 is 3. And notice it replaced that Python program by an equivalent Python program that produces the same effect. So this is going to be the principle behind how PyStep will allow you to visualize evaluation of your Python program. It'll always just simplify the program and build an equivalent program that's going to yield the same result. Okay, next, to do this times, we need to get this into a value. That's 3. That's great. But now we need to take 3 to the 4th and convert into a value. So we'll do that exponentiation. We get 81. And then finally, we need to turn 3 times 81 into a value that's 243. And at this point, we're printing a number. We're printing out a value. So the only thing we do to kind of keep going further now is actually just do the print. So I click step. And what we see over here is, yes, we've just printed out 243 in the console. So that was a really simple example of evaluation using expressions inside PyStep. So let's move on and talk about variables assignments, and then we'll kind of finish up by talking about functions. Okay, we've looked at expressions. Now let's move on to language level 1, where we consider variables and assignments. So here I've gone ahead and set PyStep to language level 1, and the first example here consists of this program, a comment, and then an assignment statement down here, and then a print statement. And let's kind of use PyStep to understand how this program is evaluated, because we'll kind of see what happens when you define a variable now inside Python. So the way we evaluate an assignment statement is we take the right-hand side and we step through it and evaluate it till it's a value. So in this particular case, this is already a value. So if we step, we're going to simply go through and create a new variable which has assigned to it the string Joe. So notice what happened in here is that assignment statement actually was deleted. It disappeared. We don't need to execute it anymore. It's actually already been processed. We've got a definition over here. Now you might ask, well, why didn't it just leave it here and kind of move where we're evaluating downward? You'll see kind of the method to my madness when we talk about functions, because we're going to actually see that kind of removing the piece of code that's been executed allows us to understand function evaluation, always work with a single program. So for here, next we need to go through and evaluate this print statement. So again, the way we evaluate print is we look at all the various expressions on the right-hand side and we check to make sure that all of them are values. So this is a value, it's my name is. Now this is name. Now name is a variable. So when we see a variable, what we do is we need to go through and grab its value over here and replace name by its value. So if I click step, we grabbed the variable name, so its value was Joe, and we place that back in the program. Now these are all values, so when I click step, what comes up is my name is Joe. So let's go back and do another example. Let's do this one. This is a nice one. This is converting Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we're going to go through and we're going to step through this. So we ignore the comment and we say Fahrenheit is equal to 32. Fair enough. Now we need to go through and evaluate this assignment statement. So we have to evaluate the right-hand side. Notice it's not a value, it's an expression. So we're going to go through here and look at the parentheses. And the first thing we need to do is we need to replace Fahrenheit by its value 32. So we step, works nicely. Then we say, okay, we need to do 32 minus 32, step. Then we do 0 times 5, step. Then we do 0 divided by 9, step. One thing to note here is that you can always unstep if you didn't follow what went on. So I can unstep and back it all the way out here. So all the way back to the beginning of the program, I can step and watch what happens. So I define Celsius to be 0. Then I need to go through and replace Celsius by the value 0. Then I need to print 0. So one way to tell if you really understand how Python evaluation works is see if you can predict the sequence of actions that take place inside PyStep. If you can't predict it, then there's a good chance that maybe there's a little fuzziness around your evaluation. So my suggestion is play with these examples and see, oh, okay, I think this is what happens next. This is what happens next. And that will help you when you're trying to then predict how your Python programs behave. Okay, let's move on to the most important example now using functions. Okay, let's move on to language level 2, where we talk about functions. So here's the first example, double. And it consists of a function definition, see down here, and that function takes a number and returns 2 times the number. And then we have down below, we print out the value of a call to the function double. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on stepping through this example to understand how function evaluation takes place inside Python. So the first thing to do is when we step, all we do is you just create a kind of this variable double whose value is a function. Now this kind of holds all the information attached in the body of double. The real work's going to come down here, and we now try to evaluate this function call. So we say print, we've got to evaluate the right-hand side. So the first thing we do when we're evaluating a function call, we have to evaluate all the parameters to the function call, all the arguments. So notice here, we need to evaluate 1 plus 1. So if I step, that reduces to 2. At this point, we're now out of the place where we have a little bit of hard work to do. We have to go through and evaluate the function double with the parameter being 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to step. This is actually explained in a fair bit of detail in the guide for PyStep with using functions, so you can go read that. But I'm going to step and we'll just see what happens. So the critical thing that happened here is what we did is we tacked some code on the front of our program. So remember the principle inside PyStep is we always build an equivalent Python program that gives us back the same answer. So here what we did is we did two things, really actually three things. We went through and took the parameter x for double and we gave it the value for the corresponding argument. Okay, so see, it was double of 2, so we said x equals 2. Now I put a little subscript 1 here to say this is a local variable. It's a variable we're going to only use inside the evaluation of double. The second thing is there was a return 2 times x. Let's see, unstep here. There was return 2 times x here. Let's step all the way back forward again. So what happened was we split that return 2 times x into two statements. We went through and we said 00 is going to be the answer returned by the function. And we said, let's make that the value of the return. And then the second thing is we took that return and we replaced return 2 times x by return 00. Now if we execute this program, I claim we're going to get the exact same result. Now one thing to note here is this blue line. This blue line illustrates the whole reason we went through and we trimmed away the pieces of the program that we'd already evaluated inside PyStep. All we're going to do here is just tack some new code onto the front of the program and just keep merely evaluating. So this is kind of the dividing line. This is the portion of the program corresponding to the evaluating the function call. This is the remainder of the program. So this will be more useful when we actually have multiple function calls taking place. So let's start stepping. So we define x1 to be 2. See, next we're going to go through, we're going to place x1 by 2. Then we're going to go 2 times 2. Then we're going to define this temporary variable 00 to be 4. Then we're going to go through and we're going to take 00, we're going to replace it by 4. And now at this point, when we do a return statement in this particular mode, the way return statements are work is we're going to just basically say we're done with computing the function. Nothing more should be done. In PyStep, this simply corresponds to trimming away all the code above the blue line. This code above the blue line was the things that we were doing to actually evaluate the function. We finished evaluating the function. We don't want to work on it anymore. So when we click a return, we hit a return, we're done. We trim away all the code above the blue line. In Python, when you hit a return, you're done evaluating the function. Nothing more happens. So I'm going to click step, and we trimmed it away. And now at this point, notice that 00 contains the value of the function. So we step, we get a 4 in here, and we step, and sure enough, we printed 4 over here. Let's go on to the next example. This one involves doing evaluating two functions. We want to do Fahrenheit to Kelvin. So to do Fahrenheit to Kelvin, we use Fahrenheit to Celsius. I'm going to just walk through it here. I'm going to go fast. So we define F to C and F to K. And notice here now we're evaluating our function F to K. And you can follow along. But the critical thing here is we now need to evaluate F to C. So notice what happened is now we have this is kind of the computation we're doing to evaluate F to K, but we then have to do kind of another function to evaluate F to C. So notice what happened here is we see code starting to pile up on the front of the program. So you can think about this as we're evaluating F to C, and then when we get F to C done, we're going to get the value for F to K, and then we get that back, we're going to actually pass it back to the rest of the program. Over here are some of the values that we're creating to kind of hold the results as we're walking along. That can get a little complicated. Python does that for you basically without you even knowing. But this is a way to kind of help understand a little bit behind what's going on whenever you're evaluating this. If you can predict what's going to happen in here, I think you'll start to understand function evaluation much better. There's a write-up of this in the guide for PyStep for level 2. I would suggest if you're confused about function evaluation, spend a few minutes, go in there, go over it. I think it'll help. Also, we talk about how to do logic and conditionals, and later we do local versus global variables. So again, if you're confused, give a shot at it. I think it'll help you understand the material. Okay, thanks. I'll see you in the next lecture.